What's happening, everyone, and welcome to the More Life Frequency podcast. If you're looking to infuse your events with an epic party vibe or get started in the entertainment industry, you're in the right place. I'm your host, Isaac, and after a decade of rocking dance floors from Australia to Greece, I'm here to share the strategies and stories from my journey in the entertainment business. Welcome everyone to episode 3 of the More Life Frequency, and thanks so much for joining me. Today, I'll be tackling an age-old dilemma when it comes to event planning, and that is whether to have your celebration at home or at a venue. It's one of the first questions people ask themselves even before deciding to go ahead and have an event. So, let the ultimate event location showdown begin. I'll be breaking down the pros, cons, and everything in between to help you choose the perfect spot for your celebration. Now, as I've mentioned in previous episodes, your venue really sets the stage for your entire event. It's something that you can't actually change at the drop of a hat. Venues and just spaces in general tend to emit a certain energy as soon as, if they're set up correctly or they're set up in a certain way, they emit a certain vibe as soon as your guests walk in. So it's so important to get that absolutely on point. On that note, let's get it started with the pros and cons of hosting your event at home sweet home. Now, over the years, I've thrown a lot of parties and events at home, and I've decided to throw them at home for various different reasons. Some examples of this is my business partner's engagement party of over 100 people was actually hosted at home. I've also had some DJ sets held at home and 30th birthdays. And the reasons why I'm about to get into right now. And the first is personalization. So let's take my business partner's engagement party as an example over here. He was able, and his fiance were able to design the space exactly as they wanted it to be designed, exactly how they had envisioned it. They were lucky in the sense that the space was spacious and accommodated for, all the people that they wanted to have at an event. Like, for example, they wanted some glow furniture outside. There was a pool area as well, so beautiful fairy lights were passed from across the pool, which created an amazing lighting effect, especially at night. We had a bar section as well, which we were lucky enough to have a friend bartend. We turned the kitchen, basically sink and island area, into the bar itself, which worked out an absolute treat. There was a section for the DJ, which was from the lounge room on looking to the outside of the area. So the place was really able to be personalized. And the same as whenever I've hosted DJ sets at home. It's just whatever you have envisioned in your head. We had the vision of setting up a DJ set in the middle of the living room and having people crowd both in front and behind the DJ decks and filming that whole set. So it really gave us the flexibility and the freedom to do that, and the freedom to do whatever was in our head that sometimes when you are actually hiring a venue, you can't have that much freedom in those decisions. So on to my second point now, which is intimacy. So having an event at home really creates like a familiar vibe and a very homely type of vibe that you can't really get when you hire out a venue. This actually was so favorable for the engagement party just because it created a familiar yet different sort of feel to it. Everyone felt at ease, but it was like the house was dressed up, like just as somebody would dress up when they're going out or they have a formal and they'd put a suit on. The house did the same thing. And even with the DJ set and the boiler room style type of DJ set, the place looked different. We moved furniture around to create space. We had certain lighting, both for the engagement party and for the DJ set as well. So that was absolutely great in capturing that feeling that we wanted to go for with those events in particular. Now, point number 3 I want to make is potential cost saving. So it's quite a no-brainer that hosting the party at home presents a lot of opportunities to save money in certain aspects. A big saving is, of course, with drinks and with food. A lot of venues obviously charge an astronomical amount, whether that's, per person for food. Some start from minimum $40 just for some finger food. And you don't even get a dinner style thing, or so that those costs can really add up over there. And I won't even get started with alcohol, because that can just, when you have an open bar at a venue, that can just blow through the roof. But when you host your own event at home, you can go and buy, the alcohol from beforehand from a liquor store. For example, in Australia, we have Dan Murphy's. And actually, my business partner, when he threw his engagement, made a deal with them to bulk buy. So you can actually go ahead and bulk buy the alcohol, and whatever you don't open, you actually get the money back. So heaps of people don't know this. There's a little tip for you, and there's a little hack. So you can save an astronomical amount of money by doing this. Now, point number 4 is flexibility. I've already talked about flexibility in the terms of the setup, but now I want to address that, you set the rules. There's no strict venue timelines. There's no noise. There is noise curfews. Usually if you're in a residential area, at least here in Australia, you don't go past midnight, just as a courtesy to the other neighbors. Also, if it's past midnight and the coppers knock on your door, you got to turn it off. That's no fun for everyone. So just as a courtesy thing, always just shut down your party at midnight, or at least when it hits 11 p.m., close all the doors so no noise will actually travel outside, and move everybody inside if possible. Having your event at home also allows you to create a custom event schedule, so you can pretty much start whenever you want and finish whenever you want. This is not always the case when you hire out a venue. In fact, there's been so many times where I've been at a set and, it hits 10 p.m. and because it finishes 10 p.m. on the dot, even though you have the whole dance floor pumping and everything like that, they want you to shut it down. I once, at an event in the city, had a venue manager come up to me at 10 p.m. on the dot saying, if you don't turn this off in the next minute, I'm going to pull out the main plug. Now, obviously, come on, you're going to damage all the equipment by doing that and everything. But, there wasn't even that flexibility to finish the last song for 30 seconds before cutting out the volume and the music. Now, I get it. Venues have certain rules and things like that. So it's just something to be aware of before you actually go in and book a venue for your event. Do you want that flexibility? Do you need that flexibility? Because just understand that sometimes venues just can't provide that sort of thing. Now, onto the cons of hosting at home, because as you know, it's not always sunshine and rainbows. You could have space limitations. So let's be honest, some homes and or apartments aren't really designed for hosting huge crowds. Some apartments get crammed with just 20 people in them. I was just at an event on the weekend, which was at an apartment, and I think it had around 25 people at this event, and the place was full. And yeah, it created a great vibe, and it was super fun. Like, don't get me wrong, but if you're thinking of hosting a bigger event, like 50 people, 100 people, and you have an apartment, then you need to seek out a space that caters for the type of event that you want to have. Sometimes also when you have events at home, there's limited dance floor area spaces, and a lot of venues actually create or cater for dance floors specifically. Some of them even have like staging rigs and lighting rigs and sound rigs. They're very much built to handle these types of events. So, that's something to consider when you are hosting an event. Sometimes, too, where people live can present parking challenges. So, if you live in a massive, apartment block complex and, it's in a main area or in a main city, where are your guests going to park? That might be a problem, too. Some venues may actually have dedicated parking for the guests. Some don't. Yep, granted. But it's something, again, to consider. Keep it at the back of your mind, and before you go ahead and decide if you want to have it at home or at a venue, just think about that aspect as well, something a little bit to consider. Now, when you have parties at home and you have a great, great time, the next day is always tough because that's cleanup day. That's like, you got the dishes, the rubbish that's been left around and things like that. One of the tips I would say if you do decide to have an event at home is provide bins for people in different areas, and whether that's recycling and waste bins or the actual like red and yellow bins that they provide here in New South Wales in Australia. It just gives people somewhere like, to put their rubbish instead of leaving it around, the whole house and the whole place, which just creates more work later on. And of course, keep in mind the type of guests you want to invite too, make sure they're a respectful bunch. I've had friends come over for events beforehand, and like they were just so respectful, and they made sure that they, threw away everything in the bins and in the right bins. It just makes the cleanup the next day or even that evening just so much easier. And if you know the people, like, don't be afraid to say, hey, do you mind like just helping me out a little bit here before I go to sleep or before wrapping up the event, in order to just do like a quick cleanup? Because, the more hands you have on deck, the way better and easier it actually is too. Obviously, hosting a party at home, you've got heaps of things to consider. It's your own place, it's your own things. You're constantly thinking, what if something breaks? It's a lot of stress. So just be aware of that. You've got a lot of things on your plate when you host at home, and it's all on you. You've got to think of all the things that usually an event manager would think of for you and might even bring up to you. And, it's just all on you. It's your job. So if you're the type of person to really like get stressed over this stuff, or even maybe lose sleep over it, I've had some friends come up to me and just like, ask for advice and say, oh, when you're hosting like parties or events, like, how do you do it? It's just so stressful. And I'll just say, like, my first event I ever held at home, I was actually 18 for my 18th birthday. I was stressing properly. Like, I don't think I slept the night before the party. But as you do more, as I started DJing, getting involved in the entertainment business and things like that, it became easier. I became stressing less. And a lot of that is actually, it's number one, it's experience, but number two, it's also preparation. The more things you can think of, ahead of time, the easier it's going to actually be. So the fact that you're listening to this podcast right now, trying to prepare yourself for the event, you can put your mind a little bit at rest, saying that, you're thinking that you're doing all the research that you can possibly to throw on the best event. So sometimes just take the pressure off yourself. Don't put so much, you know, pressure and strain on the actual event. At the end of the day, think about it as it's a 5 hour, 6 hour event. Mate, once it happens and then finishes, it goes like that so quickly. And you put all that prep in, and it's just not worth, making this big scenario up in your head that you get worried about. But if you're that type of person, just take that into consideration if you're going to host at home. My last point is neighborly concerns. So when you host a party at home, please, please, please go to all your neighbors and let them know you're going to have an event at home, even if it's during the day. Again, it just comes down to courtesy, and it lets them know, okay, there might be a bit of noise, tonight or during the day today. It's not going to be forever. And, just ask them, like, if they want to join, like, feel free and come by. I know my neighbors over here, some of them love to have an event and a party, and it's just a nice thing to do as common courtesy over there. Okay, now we're going to go through the pros and cons of hosting your event at a venue and or hiring a space. Now, over the years, I've had the privilege of working with some great venue operations managers when I am hiring out my own space. And what do I mean by great? Man, they just think of everything. Like, whatever alcohol you want to provide at the party, they got it. They'll make sure it's there for you. Security guards, they'll employ them. They'll pay them. And everything like, sound, you want some extra sound? No worries, I'll hook you up. And there's been some really, really good experiences that I've had, and amazing events where, for example, I threw a DJ event in this section of a club, which was just, it was just built for sound. And it really had like an underground rave type of feel, which is what I was after for that particular event. And the experience with the actual venue themselves and the ops manager was so good and so great. And he had actually been in the entertainment industry for many years too. So it was amazing to actually learn from this guy. And, he's done these things 100 times before. So I picked up so many things and, tips and tricks to look out for that, to be honest, they still serve me to this day. So on to some of the pros now after that story, and that is space, and more space. If you choose the right venue, amazing. Like, it doesn't matter how small your house or apartment was. This is the venue now. You've got heaps of room to play with. Whether you want, again, for it to be like an intimate engagement party style feel, or you want a rave for a hens party, like, if you choose the right venue, man, you've got it. You've got it made. You're already so many steps ahead to be having a great event and a great party. So it all starts with choosing the right venue if you don't decide to have it at home. Some venues even cater for DJs, bands, and entertainers too, whether that's acoustically or with the space as well. And that can just elevate your event from a level 5 to a level 11 out of 10. Like, absolutely, that's game changing. Point number 2 is kind of what I said when I told my story. It's professional staff and services. So a lot of venues, again, they have their own catering staff. So they might make some great food, whether that's finger food or sit-down dinners and whatever you're after. They employ the bartenders, the waitresses and waiters, the chefs. These are all things that you don't need to worry about or think about, since you're not having the party at home or at your apartment or at a place that you own. These are all now taken care for you. And for some people, it's a massive weight on your shoulders and there's a big if, the people are the the right people and they're professional. So really like do your due diligence beforehand. Meet the venue owners and or the ops managers who are going to be handling your event, and make sure there's that synergy in what you want to how they work. It's just super, super important. Now, let's talk about ambience and atmosphere. This is something that you can now actually chat to your venue manager or ops manager in regards to creating. You can share your vision with them. Like, let's say you want an all-white, hens party, and you want to have decor around to suit that theme. They now may be able to help you, or at least point you in the right direction of people who can actually help you. Game changing, reduced stress, which is my actual next point. And, if all the stars kind of line up, which with events, like oftentimes it's so hard to get everything to line up perfectly. But if they do all line up perfectly and you're hosting your event at a venue, man, it's so much less stress and a lot of weight lifted off your shoulders. Let's go into the cons now of hiring a venue. And I unfortunately have a lot of experience with this as well in regards to friends parties that they have hosted at venues, and also events that I have been a DJ at. And I'll start off with one of my mates was turning 30, and he asked me, do you mind coming a little bit prior to help out a little bit? Of course I will. So I went a little bit early, and mate, what I found at that venue just an hour before, his event was meant to kick off was just crazy. There was stuff from the previous event. There were tables and chairs that shouldn't have been there. The staff were even just sitting down and having a laugh and this and that when, he had a 30th to get ready for. Usually the room half an hour before be fully ready, fully catered, all set up. This was way behind. And they didn't even organize any, like where the music was going to come from, or he wanted to do a presentation. So there wasn't, that functionality ready yet. And what was worse was nobody at the venue knew where to go to achieve that. And what I mean is so nobody knew how to operate the audio. No one knew how to operate the video. This is like less than an hour now before the event's meant to kick off. And that includes a lot of stress in itself as well. So sometimes just having the right team, yes, it's luck. And maybe it's the people that, were there on the night. Maybe they were new. I understand. It is hard to grasp a new job when you don't know the actual venue. And I do have sympathy for that. But just be aware that these are all things that may happen if you choose to hire a venue. It's that plain and simple. So let's move on to the first con, which is obviously costs. Now, with the story that I just told you about my mate's 30th and the venue employees not really knowing too much what's going on, guess what? He's still got to pay the same amount of money to that venue, and it was not cheap. You're talking over 10 grand Aussie, easy. That's just getting it started. So even though you're stuck with the, let's call it risk of muppetry, right? Because that's what it is. You risk that some of these people are muppets. So that's just the price you have to pay. The venue hiring cost doesn't just go down because of that. Now, limited customization is my next point. Even though certain, venues can provide you with a sort of freedom, also naturally there will be some restrictions as well. Whether that's restrictions with decor, layout, whether that's like a logistical limitation, it just depends on the actual venue itself. There might even be music volume limitations, and please, please, please check this, especially if you want it to be more of like a loud sort of dancing celebration. Check that the venue will actually cater for this, because I've been to a lot of events where, you know, the venue didn't want the DJ to go, but the DJ being me, to go above an iPhone volume. They weren't having it. So just make sure that it's the type of venue that you would like for the style of event that you want to hold. And of course, there might be other venue restrictions too, such as certain timelines. Maybe you have to be out by a certain time. Again, when I play certain events in public venues, they say, okay, this has got to stop by 10:30 p.m. And they don't mean 10:31. Trust me. Some of them actually mean 10:15. So just these things might happen, and it might actually, like, kill the vibe of the event just a little bit at the end, just when everybody's like having a great time and they've got really comfortable with each other, and they've met some new friends and they're all excited. And then the event comes in 15 minutes early to say, yeah, sorry guys, we got to pack up now. Thanks for coming. And yeah, make sure you pay your final invoice. Thank you. It's like, it's not the sort of thing that you want at the end of your event. So just, again, speak with the venue manager and say, look, if you mean till 10:30, like, can we please have till 10:30? So yeah, just be super, super clear with it too. Another point might be less intimacy. Again, this is going to depend on the venue itself, but oftentimes people are in a foreign environment. It's not as homey. And if homey is what you want for your event, then definitely take that into consideration. What about now a suggestion of a hybrid approach? So the best of both worlds. What do I mean by that? I mean, considering a smaller venue, maybe it does give you a homey feeling, like a small bar or restaurant. Hell, even like something like an art gallery, if you're into that sort of thing, if you have a few connections, like, why not? Community halls are a great one. I had my 21st at a community hall. Made it had a stage. I could put lighting on there. As I mentioned in a previous episode, I was inspired by Avicii at the time and that sort of setup. And this community hall was just so perfect for that. It really catered for a lot of people. It wasn't near any houses. It was cheap to hire. A lot of these community halls and stuff like that, they're actually really cheap to hire. They don't have the same rules and restrictions as other venues have, such as, compulsory security or certain limitations as to when you shut down the event. Like, you could realistically go to, let's say, a midnight, which you would at home, and no one's going to come to you at 10:30 and be like, yeah, we're closing now. Like, the keys are in your pocket. You've hired out the community hall. Perfect, great, and Bob's your uncle. You can also host, off-peak celebrations as a hybrid approach. So maybe hosting your event on a weekday to cut some certain costs and make it a bit more affordable. And some of the benefits might be that you actually get more space for doing so because, the other room right next to you is not being hired out. So you can just naturally get some more room for your guests, and maybe, it's a better vibe. Sometimes worth exploring. So at home or at the venue, let's break down some deciding factors. So you've got point number 1, guest size list. How many people are you thinking of having? If it's more than what you can cater for at home, then you got to start looking at venues outside of your home to cater. Point number 2 is budget. So if you're on a tight budget, there's heaps of options, whether that's at home or things like I just mentioned, which is our community hall. Point number 3, what vibe are you after? Is it cozy, intimate, or is it like grand, big venue, or like super fancy venue by the water, that sort of thing. And the last point, super, super important, is your sanity. You want your event to be stress-free and zen. So the question still beckons whether to have the event at home or at a venue, but honestly and ultimately it's your call. It very much depends on what you want your event to look like. One of my biggest tips would be to plan your celebration with the end in mind. But I'm sure that after weighing up the pros and the cons I've spoken to you about on this episode, you'll be able to choose a space that will make your event truly unforgettable. If you got value from this episode, please leave a review and follow the podcast to help us bring you more event planning gold. Be sure to share this episode with someone planning a party or thinking of hosting an event. If you'd like to inquire about DJ bookings or need some more resources to help you plan your next event, check out our website, morlyfe.com.au. That's morlyfe.com.au. I'm your host, Isaac, and thanks for tuning in to the More Life Frequency. Until next time, all the best and stuff the rest.